This is Jess McDonald standing in for reviewer Ginny Wu. Monster Hunter World Iceborne is more of the same glorious slog for everyone who's ever been taken down by a fire-breathing facsimile of a Tyrannosaurus Rex and thought, I can't wait to do that 50 times over. The franchise has always rewarded those willing to put in the hard yards, and Iceborne is no exception. It adds more of what set the base game aside from its predecessors without feeling overcrowded, even if its narrative could have used a little more work.
A fair wind, just like the fifth banner. Luck's on our side.
Yeah, I can't wait to get started.
Since Monster Hunter World's launch, the game has seen a steady drip feed of DLC content in the form of in-game events. Many of these follow the formula of transplanting something fearsome into an already familiar environment. The design philosophy behind Monster Hunter World Iceborne takes a similar approach in implementing that sort of content, though on a larger scale. It uses touchstones in the form of storied foes and familiar locations to build upon the robust ecosystem of the base game, which delivers an experience that will test your mettle without breaking you. Shortly after the successes of dealing with the base game's Elder Dragon predicament, a mass migration event shakes the recovering ecosystem of Astera and prompts you to investigate. What comes next is a tale of family legacies, mysterious scales, and your handler embarking on her own personal quest. To shift the focus of the story from the protagonist to what is essentially a side character is a bold one. For all the aid and assistance that the handler gives in Monster Hunter World, she's still fundamentally a living, breathing quest board. Players will no doubt have become attached to her over the course of their travels, but is that attachment deep enough to shoulder a full expansion's narrative conceit? Not quite. As soon as you're introduced to the latest curveball about Iceborne's new signature location, Hoarfrost Reach, and how that intersects rather conveniently with your handler's past, you're immediately whisked back to the lands and territories from the base game to cull a couple of monsters that have gotten too big for their boots. It's not exactly narrative whiplash, but it's certainly not as compelling as it would have been had we been the ones to follow the handler from the first step of her journey to the new lands of Iceborne. That said, revisiting those familiar locations early on to take down new and improved versions of killer dinosaurs that you've faced before is one of the most compelling parts of the game. As with the DLC strategy, the building blocks of the expansion are steeped in elements that existing players are already acquainted with. The changes that Iceborne makes in the form of these variant breeds has a twofold effect. First, they provide you with a motivation to form new strategies to slice and dice their way to the next story beat. Secondly, they're just distinct enough in terms of attack patterns and additional elemental considerations that you never really feel like you're just fighting a reskin of something you made mincemeat out of 80 hours ago. It's as if there's been a concerted effort to balance the difficulty of what many fans might rightfully view as the second coming of the coveted G rank in this latest iteration. Despite some focus on iterating established systems, there are innovations introduced in Iceborne that truly set it apart from its predecessor. Brand new monsters and the implementation of Legacy series favorites look and feel impressive, thanks to all the new ways monsters can interact with other beasts and the various locations. But more importantly, there is a library's worth of new weapon moves for you to take advantage of. Charge Axe users can now cancel into a particularly fun multi-directional attack when caught unawares. And Gun Lance users no longer have to worry about running out of ammo in an emergency before getting to use their new signature move that is, quite literally, explosive. Hunting Horn users will also have had their ability to do damage buffed, with the addition of a new move that lets you stick your horn in the ground and spin it like some kind of bizarre Beyblade to catch whatever's charging towards you off guard. That's just a few new examples, but overall these additions seem to be informed by the dual precepts of style and lethality. However, the biggest quality of life addition has been something called the Clutch Claw. Every hunter can use this alongside their primary weapon to grapple onto their foe and, depending on what other sharp object is equipped, do anything from steering a rampaging wyvern into a rock face to weakening a specific part of its body that needs to be lopped off. Having the option and ability to scale up the side of a monster after landing a savvy shot with the Clutch Claw feels ridiculously satisfying, and so does driving a beast to its doom in the many treacherous terrain pitfalls that dot Hoarfrost Reach. That new frosty landscape is beautiful and treacherous in equal measure, with new foes, more verticality than the Coral Highlands, and frozen terrain that can crack and send you plunging to your death. It really is a sight to behold. More than ever, it feels like the environment can be turned against you. Some monsters will uproot trees and throw them at you, while the wrong move on cracked ice can mean certain death. Having a grasp of every bit of the map is integral to truly mastering what Iceborne has to throw at you, and it's incredibly satisfying when everything suddenly clicks and you go from the hunted to the hunter, leading their prey to a painful trap that attempts to even the scales. Being dropped into this intricately designed location as a relatively new player may be overwhelming, but no matter your experience level, joining up with other hunters and picking your way through the icy den of beasts together is incredibly rewarding in its own way. And Iceborne benefits from the matchmaking improvements introduced since the release of the base game. Monster Hunter World Iceborne is at its best when you're fighting tooth and nail against something that you know could crush you within its teeth in a second, even though this might feel like it came at the expense of a more interesting narrative. Nothing is quite as good as the biting chill cutting through the furs of your armor, the shrill cry of your palico as it comes to your aid, and the wind roaring in your ears as you latch onto a beast's flank and climb up its side while it bucks and roars. This expansion is rife with moments like that. All of the improvements feel like they were done with the excellent building blocks of Monster Hunter World in mind, which means that getting to the meat of the matter is quicker and more satisfying than ever. There's no more fussing about with the new systems or worrying about ruffling the feathers of hardcore fans with a direction change in the series. Those teething problems have already come and gone. Iceborne is a confident step into the future of the franchise, and it's hard not to think about what might come next.
Thanks for being here.
You're a lifesaver.